recap quickly. So today I will do a short intro on the activities of the European Cybersecurity Organization and the Cyber Range Focus Group activities, setting the paving the way on EU level cyber range and cyber range related services ecosystem. And then we will have 3 very exciting presentations on current and novel developments in the EU cyber range related space or domain. And after that, we will have an open panel discussion with the presenters and myself. So for those who don't know me, I'm Csaba Virág. I am co-chairing the European Cyber Security Organization's Working Group 5, which is the responsible for cyber range and education. And also I am coordinating the cyber range focus group established by the Commission and by the pilots, the 4 Cybersecurity Competence Center pilot projects to coordinate and share information on the ongoing cyber range and exercise related researches and developments in that area. And if you allow me, I just quickly share a few slides just to give a better overview on the activities that we are doing now. So with the cyber ranges work group with EXO, actually we set a few goals that we would like to reach in the upcoming 2 years. And one is to actually create or establish a cyber range alliance, which is pretty much in line with the cyber range focus group's activities. And currently I'm working on educating our market, so to say, by creating a procurement checklist that should be aiding those organizations who would like to acquire or procure a cyber range and related services, so they know that actually what are those key differentiators or key technical aspects and functional aspects that they should look for. And along with this, we hope to be able to accomplish the best practice guide accompanying this effort. We're also working on creating a use case template for academia, how cyber ranges can be used in the research and education space. And we already released almost 2 years ago a white paper on understanding cyber ranges, which we hope to update very soon. We are working closely together with several EU level stakeholders under the education and training domain. This includes ENISA, this includes academia stakeholders, training providers, cyber range providers, and we are already working on a label called Cybersecurity Education Made in Europe, which should actually be a volunteer standard, so to say, a benchmark that we as community establish and safeguard and set the minimum quality and competence requirements that we would like to see from the future cybersecurity workforce and students. The working group is highly active in the HR space, guiding or assisting the HR personnel understanding cybersecurity issues, along with setting or working on the cybersecurity skills framework together with ENISA, establishing the 12 core profiles in this skill framework. So these are the activities under EXO that I would like to highlight, along with obviously the close collaboration with Women for Cyber, which is on the way to establish an academia, promoting all these activities that we do, along with the need for more women in cybersecurity. With the cyber range focus group, actually, the work is, like I mentioned, on the coordination part, how the EU ecosystem of the cyber ranges and cyber exercises can be better established, made more visible and accessible the stakeholders, so that actually we bring down the cyber ranges hard to access to a much more easier to access level, and make it available for more and more organizations, nation states, and who knows, even SMEs. And this has been targeted by the pilot projects. Several researches have been done in this area, both from the technical aspect, from the usability aspect, the different domains of usage, from digital twin to exercises through training or researches, and also establishing the bare minimum requirement for next generation cyber ranges. And the work is ongoing in that regards, how actually we can define a market and what is the ecosystem when we talk about cyber ranges and cyber exercises. So I'm really happy to participate in this webinar, as I said, because I believe that webinars like this and presentations that we are about to see very soon are actually all in line of highlighting and showcasing the hard work that is being done under EU funds in the EU, and all adding closely together to the European cyber resilience and digital sovereignty that has become even more important, especially now under current geopolitical situation. So with that being said, I would like to invite Jakub to start with the presentation of the great work that has been done under the Concordia project, development for an open cybersecurity training and exercise solution. Jakub, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Saba. I hope you can hear me, that everybody can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Perfect. So, yes. And now you should be even able to see my screen.
We do not yet.
Not yet.
Now.
So now.
Yes.
Now it's perfect.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Jakub. I'm actually from Maastricht University, which is participating in Concordia, and I want to show you presentation on how actually design an open cybersecurity training exercise. The reason is because we released our Kaipo CyberRange platform during last year, and Kaipo CyberRange platform in a nutshell, it's the first open source CyberRange in EU, I believe. That means that you can basically download it right away and test it. We are actually also working on like several improvements at this moment, how to make it even more user friendly, how to make content development easier, and how to make everything smoother. Like just few interesting facts about the CyberRange itself. We are developing it since 2013. The project was at the beginning supported by Czech Ministry of Interior, and I'm sorry. Yeah, it was supported by Czech Ministry of Interior, and right now it's built on top of the OpenStack cloud. I mean, it's the idea behind the CyberRange that we are trying to keep everything as open as possible, to use open tools. Actually, the format of the contents of training and exercises is also open. So there are no issues of sharing content, sharing ideas, and so on. And I also decided that I'll try to show you actually the CyberRange live if it's possible. I know that we'll have not enough time to go through everything, but we can try to see the important parts. So right now it should be switched to our CyberRange actually. Just please confirm someone that it works. And as you can see, this is the main GUI of the CyberRange. The first thing I would like to show you actually is the definition of, or let's say to show you how does it look like to create a training. It consists of two parts. One is Sandbox Definition, which means basically that's a definition of the systems, of the networks, and so on. Here, as you can see, we have two definitions already available. And if we check it very briefly, then, and you click on the link, then you can see it will send us to our GitLab, and then basically you can see how everything is described. That like kind of huge advantage is that the whole CyberEng is connected with GitLab, so the versioning and like the everything what you need to use this code it's very easy and very So this is the Sandbox definition. That's the technical part you need for your training or for your exercise. Then there is another part which is called training definition. That means that basically you define how the training itself looks and works. As you can see that we have it divided into levels. Like the first level here is just, let's say, some summary of what is happening in this training. And then we have the other levels, which are actually the game ones, which means that we have defined how long it should take, how many hints the user can get or the trainee can get, there is a right answer, and so on. And basically with these levels, you can put together the whole training. Doesn't matter how long you want to have it. Doesn't matter how many levels. You can also, if you want to add some questionnaires, as you can see below, it's very good for, let's say, collecting feedback or, I don't know, asking some follow-up questions. Like I think in this Concordia consultant course, we are actually using this the way that you work in the CyberEng, and then there are additional questions, like, for example, which tool you need to use to crack the password and so on. So this is, let's say, the part of me as an administrator. And also, if you have these definitions put together, then you create something called training instance, which basically means you define how many trainees can attend, how long it takes, and so on. And for this also you need defined resources. That means that you have your virtual environments available. We can also kind of easily check what is actually happening in this CyberEng. We can see that this instance is actually quite empty. So we have a lot of space here to work. And just very brief check for how does it look like from the point of view of the trainee. If I remember actually the token correctly. This token means that you can share it with your trainees, and at the moment of the exercise, okay, so it expired, no worries. It means that you can share it with your trainees and they can access on the time they need to, and so on. So because it seems that it expired, I can show you very briefly how does it look inside of the sandbox. Because every trainee has basically this map, and then they can access the machine. And yeah, and here you can see the basic machine. How does it work? I was playing in this sandbox before a bit, so the idea was to find the telnet here and like crack the password, which can be, for example, done like this. So like right now we are trying to attack the server machine, and then we'll just simply get what is happening. But yeah, well, this is very briefly the CyberEng. I would like to really show you much more, but there are too many things. So let's go back to presentation. The idea was actually to talk more about what is the platform good for. It's good for basically two use cases. It's for training. So it means you have CTF-like hands-on training, as you saw actually. You can have a red or blue team event. So it means you can train your trainees in the attack scenarios, or they can train the defending or hardening skills. from my point of view, this is very useful to train people, to teach them how to do the work properly. And also we actually have few training scenarios already available, so you can download them and you can use them. Otherwise you need to develop your own, and we have also more parts available, so it's kind of easy. The other part is exercises. From my point of view, the exercise is the second most realistic way to train people how to work, or what happens if attack happens. I mean, the first most realistic is the attack itself, or let's say the red teaming activity. Here we have these exercises actually available as a service, because we do it for customers on top of this platform. So it basically, you can also see that it's very well used during its lifetime. And yeah, as I said, the training itself, it's good for this level-based structured learning. As you saw, it means that the trainee kind of walks step by step. It's from my point of view as a lecturer, you can lead him the way you want to. He can get all the help through the hints and everything. So it's quite fine. It's also kind of nice that in the platform you have actually a lot of monitoring and feedback tools, so you can see actually if any trainee is lagging behind, and like you can help them, or you can see what is happening. You can actually adjust through this feedback and all the data, the training. So like basic, if you realize that some level is too hard, you can make it easier, or you can switch it and so on. For the training, we are actually using the platform itself for teaching at Masaryk University. That's one job of this platform. It was also used in the past, and it's going to be used again for a Concordia Cyber Consultant course. That's for part of the learning, and also for the part of the testing, the participants. So they basically have their hands-on exam in Kaipo. It's like very interesting part. And from the exercise point of view, as I said, we are doing mostly red-blue team exercises. So it means that you have your team as defenders, so people from cybersecurity team and so on. They are trying to keep the infrastructure alive, and we have automated tools and like our people from red team which are attacking them. So these attacks are totally realistic. It's like those are the attacks that are happening in the real infrastructures. The defenders, on the other hand, have realistic tools. So if they want to have elk stack for logs, they can have elk stacks for logs. If they need to have any other tool, they can have it. The infrastructure I put here is semi-realistic. It actually means that you can make a digital twin of your infrastructure here in Kaipo platform, but it doesn't make sense so much. It's too costly solution. So we are trying to create every time something semi-realistic, as you can see on the right side, which actually is something like a branch of one company with a lot of employees and a lot of vulnerabilities and so on. And also we are actually using people who are emulating users, and we are also emulating traffic inside. And during the lifetime of Kaipo, we had a lot of these exercise events. We did Cybersec exercise, which was actually the first technical exercise in Czech Republic. And we also actually work with banks, for example, or companies from energy sector. They train their cybersecurity operation or the CSIR teams here. We are actually looking forward to work with more. I think there are actually also hospitals in the pipeline and so on. But yeah, just very briefly, I wanted to actually talk about how to design a quality training or exercise, because I think that this is right now an issue. We have open source CyberRange. We can, like, basically anybody can use it, but how to make the training, or the exercise, is the important part. From my experience as a people who designed more than a few of them, the most important part is actually to listen, let's say, to the customers you have or we have, because we sometimes learn that they actually need something else than they're asking. And then from that point of view, we need to define the goals of the exercise. So for example, one customer asked us that they need to learn how to run, let's say, drills, how to defend against DDoS attacks, and how to treat the leakage of information from their infrastructure and so on. The good idea is actually to link everything with frameworks. So we are trying to put together our trainings or our exercises with meter framework, or we are actually inspiring in the real life attacks. So basically you go through the write-up of some APT group and you try to mimic their behavior as closely as possible. Also, the other part here is that, and I cannot stress it actually enough, is that you need multi-domain approach for the training or exercise, because you have, for example, a lot of technical knowledge how it works, but it's really good to find someone who knows something about teaching and training and education and like this other concept as flipped class and so on, and how to, it actually helps you to make the training more engaging and, let's say, less boring, and also people will remember more. So like these guys have definitely place in the designing of the exercise. And the last but not least here, actually, is every time it's important to put an interesting story to tie it up together. For example, again, one of the exercises we have done was about attack on bank, and then we mimic one APT, actually that one which stole money from the Bangladesh National Bank, and we put it all together through the story, how the employee downloaded the malicious file and so on and so on. And it, in the end, it looks like it makes sense, which I think is very important. Okay, and just like very briefly, I talked at the beginning about the fact that everything is open. That means that we are offering a lot of these training content, or a lot of, and some parts of the exercises in this human and machine readable form. Basically, everything is JSON or YAML file, so you can download it, you can walk through it, and you can see what is happening there. It's very easy to make some edits and so on. Also, you can basically freely change this content between Kaipo instances. So if we have something, we can send it to you, or you can send it to us, because we are kind of trying to build a community here. We also have experience with conversion to other cyber ranges in Concordia. Basically, you just need to write a converter, because we are using tools like YAML like Ansible and so on. So you just build everything, you convert it. And actually this utilization of a widely adopted tools is also important, because it doesn't make sense to invent anything new. Like sysadmins are using this for a while, and there is no difference between designing the environment for the exercise or training and the real infrastructure. And also the big advantage here is the higher reusability of the code. Basically, you just can swap the Ansible roles with your colleagues or other organization to build something. So I think it kind of works great, and I think it's worth a thought. And actually, just I think totally last slide of this presentation, I wanted to say that in Concordia we are working on the community. So we hope that there can be more organizations who are actually joining the community, because we need more content, and I think everybody needs more content right now. So we need more training, we need more exercises. We are actually offering something already and some supporting tools. And yeah, we are trying to set up something like foundation to govern the Kaipo Cyber Range, because it's open source. So we'll be more than happy if some other organizations bring their thoughts. And we want to propose this platform for hands-on trainings in ECC and NSA. And Yeah, I mean, this was very, very, very fast, I think. I think if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to ask. And just to the last and tiny promo here, I would say this was very brief introduction to how to design the hands-on training, and we will have, let's say, more detailed webinar on this topic soon. So if you want to, you can see it. It will be more technical. So if you want to learn how to design the training itself, and maybe you have some interested thoughts, that we'll be happy to see you there. And I think that's it. There are all the links, all the social media. So please check the platform itself on Concordia, and yeah, that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jakub. And you're absolutely right. I believe we are a little bit ahead of schedule. So if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. I see one question in the chat, and this says that I would like to ask about how to add the Cybersec tools to the training environment, especially those of the blue team. I'm not sure, Jakub, if you can answer this one.
I will try, I guess. If I understand it correctly, you are asking or the person is asking for adding, I don't know, tools like, I don't know, Nmap or Wireshark or basically any other tool, and this can be done through the Sandbox definition, basically from the part of design in the environment. So it means you basically deploy Wireshark in the image you need, or you basically put it in the image, and that's it. We don't want to put anything special into GUI, to keep it as simple as possible, and these things are part of the environment for us.
Thank you. There's another one. What would be the minimum hardware requirements to set up Kaipo?
Yeah, well, it depends, to be honest, because depends how many, let's say, students you want to have there. I think that right now we have some testing instances, which basically the issue here is the amount of memory. So I think my colleagues are using for testing 32 to 64 gigabytes of RAM. And yeah, and you need a few CPUs. I think that like the normal Azure or AWS server can work. If you want to use it in production, then it really depends. I think the minimum we deployed was deployment of 2 servers for OpenStack and so on, because like the thing is, the OpenStack kinda is a cloud platform, so as much as you give it takes. And yeah, I hope I answered.
Yeah, well, we have more questions, so I encourage everybody to use the question and answer panel under the Zoom feature. So
I can see the question about adding a CM or something like that. Yeah, that's basically the same idea as I said with the Wireshark. Or so you just need to deploy the CM on the machine. Maybe I can go back in the presentation for a second. Yeah, here. For example, this one you can see on the right side. Then there was there is SOC server actually in this exercise, and this had, I think, Kibana, it had Wireshark and so on. And like all the tools were actually concentrated here on the SOC server, and then it was like the elk stash, and so it was picking up the information from the different machine through the packet beat and so on, and the log beat and so on. So basically you work like this.
Yes, and some more asking about if the solution can be used to test software as well. And can it be set up as a cloud, like a GCP or Amazon, for testing purposes?
I think it can be used for testing software as well. I mean, we had more use cases before. We decided just to focus on exercises and training, but yeah, you can. I think basically anything you can put in a virtual environment and virtual network, you can do there. And yeah, it can be set up in the cloud, but for testing purposes, I think you can use AWS, like for very easy testing, because like my colleague is going to, or we are going to release simple testing deployment very soon. So stay tuned. That it can be done in AWS, and actually the whole production environment can run in public cloud in, I don't remember the name, but there is one cloud provider in Europe, and you can perfectly use it. It's already tested. So if you don't have your own cloud infrastructure, there is no issue. There are no issues.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the very comprehensive introduction. And I can confirm that according to my knowledge, this is the only open source cyber range currently on the EU, in the EU, that is developed by EU organization and maintained by EU organization, which is very highly welcomed. And I truly hope that this also helps to make cyber ranges and cyber range provided services more accessible to a wider audience, especially in the academia and even in the corporate world. So thank you for this. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you also for the great work that you and your team delivered with Kaipo. And that being said, I would like to invite on the floor, sorry, need to check my notes. Panagiotis from Ubitech for the Spider project. And it's a very interesting cyber range, because this is, again, the first one that is purely focusing on 5G, or the main focus is coming from the 5G aspect. So the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. So I hope that you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I'm very happy that I saw the presentation of Jakub, and I didn't have the chance in the past to see, have a close look of the environment. So I will try also to emphasize on things that I consider that they are highly related and even overlapping, I would say, which for me is a good thing in the sense that it seems that we're working towards a direction that is converging, and that's very good. So before I delve into the actual environment, as Jakub did, I will provide some introductory, let's say, slides about setting the scenes and the challenge. So the actual goal of Spider is to create a niche cyber range that tries to tackle the cybersecurity challenges of the 5G environment. And it goes without saying that the 5G infrastructure has actually been redefined the entire concepts of network instantiation, since the concept of the network slicing, which means practically softwareization of everything, came into practice. That means that right now, when we are talking about practically mobile network deployment, we are talking about backhaul and fronthaul virtualization artifacts spanning from software-defined networks, infrastructure provision, software-defined radio. So practically, we are talking about a vast ecosystem, very specialized, that on the other hand, right now, relies, I would say, in commodity and off-the-shelf chipsets and compute platforms in order to operate itself. Contra to the previous, let's say, 2G and 3G and practical and part of the LTE, where part of the stack of the telecom stack was relying in some proprietary devices. That being said, it could be argued that right now the entire actual layering of this software-defined ecosystem slicing that is under the hood supporting the OSS, the operational part of modern mobile networks, they are actually exposing attack vectors, significant attack vectors, both in what we call in the backhauling part, where we have virtualization instantiation managers, the VIMs here, like OpenStack, or wide infrastructure management that are making the connectivity and the path establishment between the various DCs that are actually interplay in order to have a homogeneous exposure of and operation of the network. Or if we are talking about intermediate services, where we have virtual network functions, VNFs, that right now is a core concept for materializing network programmability, which actually plays a significant role when it has to do with the traffic shaping, efficient traffic manipulation, efficient firewalling, path establishment, and even attachment point between compute elements that host vertical services. You all know that 5G right now acts seamlessly as both communication service provider, CSP as it is called, and infrastructure service provider, which means that right now 5G providers have to operate under the assumption that they have multiple hats, and under this operational model and under this layering, there are exposed vectors that needs to be tackled. So we are a consortium of 19 partners, including telco, actually companies that offer telecommunication equipment, like Ericsson, Telefonica, Thales, Atos, research institutes, and SMEs that are creating vertical applications for 5G. And the goal is to create actually a playground, cyber range, where actually real slices can be instantiated, real slices of telecommunication providers can be created, and on top of these slices, real applications can be deployed and make use of deliberate or inherent vulnerabilities in all the entire span of the materialized slices in order to create an ecosystem where red teams and blue teams can have access in order to, as in the case that we saw previously from Kaipo, to offer a CTF-alike experience for the red team or defend the castle for the blue team experience for extremely, as I said, niche types of problems. So the platform, we could say that we have differentiated the value proposition for 5 distinct roles. So we have training scenario creators, where we will see their interface later on, which in a complete analogy, I would say, with Jakub's presentation, you're allowed to put your direct acyclic graph, your DAG, your graph of assets that is going to be instantiated. As we saw in the Kaipo case, it is normal in the previous case, everything to be virtualized and offered as a container and use some hypervisors to bootstrap these containers. In our case, differentiation factor is that some of the network programmability may employ some specific software-defined networking hardware equipment, or some, as we call it, PNF, some physical network function. When we are talking of PNFs, we are referring either to antennas, programmable radio resources, programmable switches, etc., etc. That being said, the training scenario creators must know the specificities and the constraints that the hardware where Spider is bootstrapped is actually adding in the ecosystem. So based on the hardware resources that we have, analogous scenarios can be bootstrapped. Of course, we have red team members, blue team members, infrastructure providers that they can bring along their virtual or their PNFs, their physical network functions. And there are some non-technical other value propositions for risk auditors, because during the execution of the exercises, through a SOC, as in the case where Jakub mentioned, we are introspecting the generated indication of compromise and the alerts in order to generate some automated risk exposure factors. The educational modalities are grouped in four, I would say, not distinct but complementary modalities, which is theoretical training, which we will see later on. It is very overlapped, not to say coincides, with Jakub's presentation, where we actually have the notion of the knowledge object, the difficulty level, the time, and required, the mapping to the CAPEC Mitre skill set, etc., etc. We have the core, the focal point, it's hands-on training, where we have emulation services, instantiation of real services, and then simulation and soft skills. I will not delve into the architecture because this is not the purpose of the telco. Just want to mention that the entire architecture is practically separated in 5 swim lanes. In the first swim lane, we have all the authoring tools, the ability to check in our custom exercise, mobilize the VNFs and the PNFs, and put them in a custom repository. In the second swim lane, we have the slice managers. So practically, we need to have an end-to-end working telecommunication slice. You know that 3GPP right now is promoting the concept of the SBA, the service-based architecture. That means that the entire subcomponents of the 5G networks, which means policy management, attachment points, etc., are virtualized components. So when we create an exercise, we must have the verticals, the vulnerabilities onboarded, and an instantiated SBA, and this is happening by an OSS practically that is being developed within the project. Then in the third swim lane, we have all, I would say, scenario-driven log extraction and progress quantification, which means that we have actually came up to a solution where we collect logs as trainers. We are actually introspecting what is happening in the SOC, what are the alerts that are being generated, and we are creating some hooks, some points. We provide some penalty and some bonus points based on these events. And we have operational dashboard UIs to see the progress of the users, and of course some theoretical training components where we are actually ask the user to answer some questions or to enhance its theoretical background on some aspects. Before I move to the actual introspection of the environment, I will just want to say that regarding theoretical training, we make a model, and here is we adhere to the model of Mitre attack, which means that exactly, I would say, as in an analogy we will log in later on, I could say that we coincide 100% there with the previous environment, where we have the ability to add certification questions or theoretical skill questions with a formal model, which is also provided in JSON, where we have, as you see here, the difficulty level, the CAPEC technique that it refers to, the time to reward all points, the trap, as we say here, the actual questions, the difficulty, the hints. I would say that it is somehow a different user interface of the same modality that Jakub showed previously. So from this environment, based on the skill set, let's say if we are talking, for example, for reconnaissance, which is one of the mid-range attack things, we have some indicative questions. Let's say an intermediate question is something about the Christmas TCP Christmas scan. We ask the user, for example, what would be the answer for such a Christmas scan. So based on these answers, we are creating some spider graphs, some evolution of the skill set of the user. And as you can see here, we have differentiated between the theoretical skill level and practical skill level. Theoretical is all about its interaction with the theoretical questions, and practical about its interactions in the actual CTF challenges that have been engaged. So regarding the focal point, which is the hands-on training, again, we set up a virtual infrastructure. This is a complete analogy to what Jakub shows previously, and I'm also happy with that. So we have actually a direct acyclic graph spanning from VNFs and PNFs, virtual network functions, and physical network functions. And this DAG, in the case of Spider, it might employ also some physical resources, and the obvious question here is how transferable I think the exercises that are created are, how interoperable, and things like that. So in our case, if we are dealing with some G node Bs, C node Bs, software-defined radio modules, or some GPU, some, as we have here, an NVIDIA Xavier GPU that is used for an O-RAN processor. So how the exercises and the vulnerabilities that are onboarded, how usable they are in general purpose compute engine is something that we will discuss later on. But it might be the case that we have a complete virtualized scenario, or that we have a scenario that requires the involvement of some PNFs. So before I delve into the actual environment, I would say that for the scoring model, we also have some specific normative models. So when someone is playing either as a red team or a blue team, we can define some formal expressions about the penalties and the bonuses that we are awarding based on the progress. These expressions are actually defined in a KSQL, in Kafka querying language, because it is a complex event processing language that allows us to create the complex window operations, which means that we are able to express some very complex aspects, like has the trainee open, let's say, the past WTF or the shadow file within 5 minutes of the first flag that is achieved, or has he or she achieved the final flag automatically. So we are able to do this, as you will see later on, automatically through the evaluation of some expressions. Since time is running out, so I will let me. Okay. Let me sign out. Okay. So actually, there are two. I want this panel to remove this panel. All right. Okay. Okay. So the value proposition of the entire project is offered through two distinct user interfaces. The one is exposed under the Spider OS EU projects, and the other under the Spider EU project. The one we address it as educational environments. It is the environment where the trainers and the trainees are actually engaging in order to play with emulation scenarios and engage with theoretical knowledge. And the other is the administration environment where resources are actually onboarded and managed in order for these scenarios to be deployed. So the two environments collaborate to each other, but the first one that is dedicated only to the administrators is actually contains a lot of details about the type of resources that someone is onboarding. In our case, we have, let's say, three types of resources. The one is unmanaged Kubernetes resources, where actually, as it can be easily inferred, in this specific environment, only virtualized scenarios can be deployed. There is OpenStack resources, Kubernetes resources, and then the OSS, spider-tailored OSS environment, which is able to handle more niche and more, I would say, specialized exercises. Exactly as in the case of Jakub, we have the ability to define specific components, which in our case, they are also containerized and are offered under a specific distribution parameter. As a difference, we do not interplay directly with the GitLab environment. That's a bad thing if you ask me, and it's also a good thing if you want to onboard some, let's say, of your custom containers. In our case, we have the ability to define free the distribution parameters of where your virtual payload exists, the execution parameters, plus some additional aspects that we may require during the deployment of our virtualized component. Moving along from components to applications, that means entire direct acyclic graphs, I think we have also a conceptual overlapping with the case of Kaipo here, in the sense that we are also defining some sort of interplay between the components. The difference in our case, when compared to the previous case, in the previous case, we had the ability to define some custom networks and perform a sort of segregation of networks and visibility of the networks, and then bundle this in specific bundle these virtual elements that will be spawned and have vulnerabilities in a specific subnet. In our case, we have to give to the OSS some specific indications about the programmability that we need for the, let's say, deployment. Okay. So we have to define some other aspects that have to do with the programmability of the radio resources, whether, for example, we want a specific radio type, where we want an antenna to be configured in enhanced mobile broadband, in narrowband IoT, ultra-reliable low latency communication. For example, it might be the case that we have a drone command and control center that is vulnerable, and all drone command and control centers require URLs, ultra-reliable communication, low latency communication. So we may require delay critical guaranteed bitrate with specific QCI identifiers for the network and all this stuff. So practically, the access, we call this access constraints, and all the link constraints between the components of the slice, like maximum delay, jitter, packet loss, throughput, etc., they are defined during the definition of the scenario. And when we create a specific actual deployment, I would say exactly as in the previous case, we have, as administrators, visibility of where it has been deployed, in which infrastructure, whether it was a VNF or a PNF, what is actually the IP that will be automatically given to the red team or to the blue team, what were the vulnerabilities that were onboarded in this specific scenario. So this is the admin interface, and for the educational interface, I would say that the two most crucial elements that have to be defined is the knowledge base editor, where we have quizzes, where we have actually the ability to create some specific knowledge item. I think this is exactly the same as in Jakub, where they had in Markdown some specific meta model with what type of skill set you are referring to, what's the difficulty level for this, what's the time, the descriptions, the possible answers, the hints, the link to relevant material and external sources. I would say it coincides exactly with the environment that we saw previously. But I think the focal point is the red team and the blue team environment. As we saw previously in the administration environment, we had emulation templates, so oral applications along that were ready to be instantiated. When a specific application is being created, the actual components, the actual type, if it is a red team or a blue team or combined, the description of the exercise, the skill set level, etc., are provided and annotated. And now I think one of the most elegant parts of the CyberRange platform is that when we create as trainers the specific exercise, and we know the sub flags, the flags that need to be achieved until the final flag, we have the ability to query in the pipeline, the event pipeline that is being generated from the SOC until its final indexing, to query it in intermediate Kafka, and try to award specific penalties, bonuses, or so we have the ability to define some bonus penalties and some points for specific steps, assuming that we know the happy path execution for a specific scenario. And that being said, that means that we have the ability to introspect what were actually the progress for a specific team within a specific timeline based on the triggered events, the filter trigger events, and the streaming expressions that we are actually intercepted from the environment.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, I think that's all. I think
we're running out of time.
Yeah. Okay. So this was it. I also have a public accessible demonstration video that I'm not going to show now because of the lack of time, and it's all about CyberRange exercise where practically we are asking someone to hack the OSS and intercept the IMS traffic and resynthesize the traffic for a sent SMS that has been provided through a specific antenna, through a software-defined antenna, and the actual SMS is the flag for actually unzipping a specific flag file. So we call it this SMS overhearing in a vulnerable OSS, which is something like our promo scenario. I think that's all from my part. I am open to questions dedicated, to Spider.
Thank you very much.
And we are also going to open source part of our platform, the ones that has to do only with the virtualized components. I mean, not the ones that have to do with the SDN part. We are going to open source the ability of the platform to bootstrap exercises in having your vanilla Docker composed. Let's say if you have only virtualized direct acyclic graph, you will be able also to upload it and play your scenarios through the Spider platform. This was a decision for the consortium, and we will keep part of the platform that has to do with the PNFs, with the physical network functions and the network reprogrammability under a specific distribution, let's say, license. So questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I don't see any questions in the Q&A tool here at Zoom.
I tried in my presentation to cover the relationship also with Kaipo. So
yes, maybe. Yeah, probably it was very comprehensive already. So okay. Maybe just a question on my side. Mm-hmm. So the project was focusing very much on 5G by default. My question is that from a technical point of view, was there any real challenge how to create the cyber range as a solution just because the domain was 5G, or it was pretty similar to other challenges that you uncovered?
Yes, okay. I would say that there were two families of challenges, so two general purpose challenges. The one challenge that has to do with the hardware specificities relates to the fact that sometimes exploits that are already exposed and are already let's say can be usable in the terms of one exercise, if they are reproducible enough, sometimes there are problems in resetting the entire infrastructure in observable zero state, because we are talking about real hardware here. We are talking about switches, and we are talking about things that we cannot very easily reset. So whether or not a specific exploit is going to invalidate our ability to perform an additional exercise on a physical hardware is one of the major challenges. And the second is that some of our use cases require have to do maybe blue teaming. Some of our blue teaming scenarios, to be honest, they have to do with putting in motion some traffic analyzers that require pre-trained machine learning artifacts. So practically, blue teams are envisaged to select pickups and pass these pickups from some statistical classifiers and check, for example, whether the traffic of the SBA is suspicious or not. So this type of suspicious traffic generation, let's say, requires some special handling of the underneath resources, which make it extremely difficult to port to some public cloud environments. For example, the ability to change the MAC addresses on the fly for your hypervisors, or some let's say elevated access that is required to perform traffic regeneration. So we had some problems, let's say, that restrict that in order to overcome these problems, because we need to have working cyber range, we are forced, that's the proper term I need, to restrict the applicability and the general purpose nature of the entire platform. Because if you need to have repeatability, if you need to have stability in your exploits, if you need to be able to deviate from the security model of your hypervisors, so you are putting a lot of constraints in your administrators in order to put this platform, to set this platform in motion. Of course.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry,
yeah.
thank you. I think you are giving very comprehensive answer. but we really need to move on.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. So thank you for the presentation. I would kindly ask you to stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
And I would like to invite Nicholas from Foresight to give his presentation. And Nicholas, we're a bit over time, but I trust you manage your time as well.
Yes, thanks for the intro. So let me share quickly my screen. So you should already be seeing my screen, and go to presentation mode. So
yes, we can see it. So good.
Great. So I'm Nicholas Lokotronis, the technical coordinator of Foresight, which is about bringing a cybersecurity simulation platform in cross-domain approach, aviation, naval, and power grid. And we are going to see today the main points, challenges, and solutions that are being brought by the project. First of all, the project as an overall approach is about delivering a federated cyber range solution, which means that it allows bringing together several cyber ranges with diverging capabilities and services being offered, exploring the capacity brought by those cyber ranges to deliver complex cross-domain scenarios, and of course provide an ecosystem in a seamless manner of services that will be delivered to trainees and trainees accordingly. So from an early paper that was released by EXO about 2 years ago, there was definition about what a federated solution stands for, and this is about an agreement of standards of operation in a collective manner, so that any provisioning of services could be provided by the federation to its end users in a seamless manner, regardless the own specific implementation of those services individually or collectively by the cyber ranges. There was also a specific definition about what an integration concept would mean about cyber ranges, where this entails the delivery of scenarios that could be shared across several cyber ranges. So in Foresight project, just to give a quick overview, we have cyber ranges and training environments, which are being differentiated in terms of capability maturity and services being offered. So in terms of mature environments, cyber ranges, we have 3 cyber ranges in different domains, namely aviation, power grid, and naval domain. So these cyber ranges provide a realistic infrastructure with all the services that we have seen in the first 2 presentations that are being provided by CRs, whereas in training environments, these are defined as more lightweight environments that could mostly and are mostly being used for security education by various partners, and can provide smaller scale and more focused hands-on training in some of security-related areas. So at a high level, Foresight has been brought several components, bits and pieces together, from learning management platforms, from dedicated modules that are defined to provide scenarios that will be agreed on by CyberRange partners and will be executed in the ecosystem, in the federation, and other tools that are relevant and useful for those designing the scenarios, like tools related to econometric models or threat intelligence platforms to keep the content continuously updated. And this is part of the overall tools provided at the federation level, which we'll have the chance to see later on in a bit more detail. So this is a high-level deployment view of the platform with various components in dedicated machines, but you can see at the right-hand side that this core platform and services that are being offered are communicating with external systems, external platforms, these being CyberRanges and training environments. So the exact details of those exchanges and services will be made pretty clear later on. So in all those environments, there has been a dedicated connectivity at layer 2 or layer 3, which make the CyberRanges to have seamless integration, at least at the networking level, with the Foresight solution, acting as a federated gateway controlling the connectivity and quality of service at the networking with the CyberRanges that are being connected. So you can see at this figure the federated platform controllers at the mid part, along with the overall environment, the federated user interface, and the platform supporting the LMS, supporting the training material that is provided to the end users. And there are plenty of other modules related to economic, to risk impact assessment, to threat forecasting, to forensic evidence collection, and others that are related to gamification, dynamic scenario creation, etc. So as I said, each CyberRange or training environment is connecting to Foresight platform, which acts as a hub to those environments via VPN tunnels, where we have a multi-tunnel approach, differentiating management data from scenario-related data and the other that are needed for the CyberRanges or in external environments to communicate with the platform. Now, the main approach that was followed in the context of the project is to have the ability to define at the federation level the needs of users in terms of hands-on training. So there exists a library of scenarios that complement professional cybersecurity training or security education, which both of those modes are being supported by the platform. And there is a dedicated exchange of messages and coordination with CyberRanges that we see at the right-hand side in order to support such scenarios. The tools that have been developed will be later on demonstrated a bit quickly. So there is a coordination orchestration between Foresight, Federation, and the external environments, which is mostly done by means of message brokers. And this coordination entails not only the design phase of a scenario, what the scenario needs to include, when the scenario needs to be deployed and executed for the needs of a specific training, but much more than that, since in the case of cross-domain scenarios, meaning scenarios that are split across several cyber ranges, there has to be coordination in terms of sharing of events and other control data between cyber ranges. So the aspects of training evaluation is also an important thing that has been taken care of at the federation level, because as I mentioned, the main idea was to provide a number of minimum services that would communicate with respective services of cyber range partners in case those were available to a cyber range, or complement those services if missing from, let's say, a more lightweight training environment, so that these are complemented and being brought into a more mature level thanks to the services offered by the federation. So in terms of evaluation, we have implemented mechanisms that are synchronizing between the federation and the cyber ranges in terms of users and trainees that will be having some hands-on training, and then in a manner that utilizes the message broker that I showed earlier, the results are getting brought back into the federation so that the users can continue working in the federated environment as before. So in terms of lightweight environments, there has been a number of extensions in open source tools to allow also lightweight solutions being communicating with Foresight project in a seamless manner, just like the cyber ranges. So this is a high level view of how, let's say, a lightweight environment like root the box can be used to communicate with Foresight Federation. Before moving on to, let's say, the approach that was taken by Foresight for the training aspects, let me again switch quickly to the Foresight environment, just to highlight a few important aspects of what has been presented earlier. So what you are seeing right now is the environment after I have logged into Foresight federated user interface, where a number of tools are made available to trainees, trainers, the stakeholders of the project in principle. And we have, of course, different services being offered to the users depending on the role and access rights of the user being logged into the system. So in this account, you can see I have more tools since I have logged in as an admin. But a trainee needs, or the trainer needs only to see the necessary tools being provided. So in terms of scenario definition, which is something that has to be taken care of at the federation level, we see that there is an admin tool called Dynamic Scenario Creation, which defines all the details of the federated of the cyber ranges and training environments that are being logged into the system. For example, showing details about the capacity of each system, And we can move on to the definition of the library that I mentioned earlier. The library of scenarios that need to be made available at the federation, and scenarios being supported actually by the cyber ranges and training environments that are part of such a federation. So you can see here scenarios being defined in the library. For example, we can take, let's say, as an example, such a scenario which has various types being supported, CTF, live fire, training, with appropriate user roles and objectives being well specified and defined, along with predefined injects that will be executed in the context of a scenario. So each scenario, of course, defines the systems and the networks that are being making this scenario available to the trainees. So we can see here details about the systems being part of this scenario, organized in terms of networks with interfaces well defined. So this scenario is, of course, the first part of the definition that needs to be defined by the designers of the infrastructure in the scenario. But this is complemented also with campaigns, what needs to be as a number of attacks that or specific tasks that need to be taken over by the trainees, either being part of a red team or a blue team, depending on what the scenario foresees. So such a component, of course, needs to make those scenarios available to the federation. So there is a dedicated part in this tool that is specifying the exact details of when, where, and how many instances, if need to be more than one, of such a scenario need to be deployed. So we can see, for example, here the overall networks capacity needed, the number of concurrent environments, and starting time and duration. So all this information is being shared to cyber ranges, which in a request response manner will approve or modify as needed the request by the federation. So this is an admin tool that is actually making this available. But when we move on to the live environment, for example, for the tool that we saw defining the details from an administrative point of view of the scenario, these details are made available in the LMS that is brought by the project, which is based on Moodle platform. And there is a dedicated visualization of the scenario, providing details about the components and systems being used, along with vulnerabilities. So this information is made available to the trainers. So this is nicely visualized in a user-friendly manner, and is made available to the users with related access rights. Of course, it's a scenario from a training point of view, a security education point of view, cultivates a number of competencies, skills. So these are all defined at the platform level. And if we go here, we can see also the number of environments, federated CRs and training environments that are part of the federation. So these are also being shown here, made available along with details about their capacity. And there's a dedicated protocol for sharing information with the federation. So all scenarios that are being supported by cyber range partners are gathered here in a user-friendly manner and being made available to trainers for inclusion in specific training modules. So each scenario, for example, has its dedicated page. We saw earlier this Power Grid module. And the user, once the scenario is ready to be executed, it can visit here the scenario, the dedicated endpoint for accessing the scenario. So this is done and organized and orchestrated by the federation. And likewise, we have a similar environment provided by the challenges that are made, let's say, available by training environments. So to continue now the presentation. So after having this coordination been provided at the federation level, let me again continue. So we have a multi-level, let's say, approach to training, trying to cultivate also individual team-based skills or soft skills at varying levels of difficulty in terms of the required expertise that is brought by the users. So we have a number of courses, as you can see here, in each domain and general ones. So it's a quite comprehensive training material that are brought by either the dedicated cyber ranges or the training environments. And though the use cases that are being supported vary from, let's say, attacks on aviation like advanced persistent threats, that attackers establish a connection with a remote CNC server and trying to manage, let's say, critical assets of aviation or other domain like the power grid, to simpler, let's say, attacks like malware spreading that are triggered, let's say, by having the user inserting some malicious USB stick in one of the PCs available to the deck of a ship. So to conclude my presentation, sorry for taking a bit longer than anticipated, probably. So Foresight, the added value is that it brings together several cyber ranges and services brought from each one, providing solutions for orchestrating such services, for providing a concrete specification language for defining scenarios and deploying and executing scenarios in its cyber range or lightweight training environment, and also complementing what is needed to design such a scenario by a number of innovative tools that we didn't have the chance to talk about in detail today, like those related to threat forecasting or economic impact assessment module, and of course gamification related approaches that make users to be more engaged in the training being offered. So that concludes my presentation. Apologies if I took a bit longer. I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas, for this very, very comprehensive introduction. And I can absolutely understand why we are running out of time constantly, because these are huge topics and really interesting tools and solutions. And I would like to invite all the presenters. I think we can just jump into the panel discussion, and if questions arise, so I ask the audience that whatever question just pops into your mind, feel free to use the question and answer tool here at Zoom that you can find at the bottom of the screen, and just ask, and we will revert back to the questions later on. So thank you for all the presentations, and let's start with a little bit of a brief summary of all the 3 different projects. So I'm asking all 3 of you actually, could you briefly summarize the advances with the end users in mind? So how each project is actually addressing the end user, and what is the value proposition there? And maybe we can keep the order of the presentation. So I would call out Jakub to answer the question first.
Thank you, Saba. Concordia and Kaipo CyberRange platform in general, I think that we actually are trying to keep the end user in mind all the time. I mean, that's the reason why we released the CyberRange as open source. We are also going to release something we are calling Kaipo Lite very soon, which is environment, let's say, for testing Kaipo itself, and it's also very good for developing the content, so training or exercise. And we are also releasing the open content. What else actually? Yeah, and we are trying to create and support the community, like not just around Kaipo CyberRange itself, but around the CyberRanges in general. Because like I think that as I mentioned in the presentation, we need to form let's say some type of community to enable creation of the content, which I think it's that then the open source CyberRange will be good alternative for the commercial ones, let's say.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I am a second. Okay, so from the Spider perspective, taking under consideration the niche aspect of the platform, I would say that the end users are actually not only the trainees that need to augment their competencies in ethical hacking, but also I would say engineers that are dealing with the virtualization and slice creation in modern networks. So, and taking under consideration that some of our exercises require to be physically present near the CyberRange, because we are dealing with man in the middle and things like that. I would say that the obvious advancement has to do with pre-populating and open sourcing some sort of complex attacks that can be supported on top of general purpose open source hardware like OpenAir interface, or let's say an open source 5G stack, which can be combined with the Spider platform in order to actually materialize and make use of the entire let's say benefits of the platform. So I think this is the clear advancement.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Yes, from our side, I can surely say that in terms of the federation approach that we took in the project, the effort that was taken to define a commonly agreed specification language for defining this whole process of scenario details that entail everything from system definitions, networks, user roles, campaigns, attacks, and whatever else is needed to fully specify such a scenario. This was a great advancement that need to be highlighted, along with the need for let's say unification of the scoring that needs to be done when we go towards evaluating trainees. since the approach is quite different in each cyber range or training environment. So this, at least from our side, we had strong connections with what was defined in terms of scenarios, and unification through the Foresight Federation to keep scoring of trainees as uniform as possible. So these two, along with other technical and more research-oriented advances, but these two definitely need to be highlighted. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, we're receiving quite interesting questions in the Q&A. So one of the questions is, if somebody has a cyber range, a CAIPO-based cyber range, and would like to leverage the tools and libraries from Foresight, how can it be done? Can it be done?
At least from our side, the tools that have been used to facilitate, let's say, coordination between the cyber ranges and training environments are open source, and the specifications are accessible to everyone. So we did an effort to keep it synced with the current standards and approaches that major CR players are following. So adhering to such a specification language for scenario definitions, this should allow other platforms join such a federation. So I don't think that it just needs some alignment, I guess, between what needs to be defined in each cyber range individually. But it can be done.
Thank you. Jakub, do you have anything to add, or is the answer?
Yeah, I think that, like, one thing I think a lot of been told right now, I think that for, let's say, putting these two cyber ranges together, we have quite open format, like we are basically using Ansible and so on. So we just need to, let's say, or we would need to check how does it look on Foresight side, and then we basically need to convert it. And I think that's be enough. Like the thing is, I don't think we should try to, let's say, reach 100% of conversion, or like there will be probably some parts which cannot be, but it shouldn't stop us.
Okay, thank you. And I guess, Panayotis, as you did not touch on the open sourceness or going open source or open sourcing the range as it is. Were there or are there any activities in that direction, or any foreseeable activities beyond some of the scenarios that you mentioned that might be potentially open sourced?
Yeah, actually, some general purpose scenarios that do not have to do with the specificity of the hardware, so the software-defined radio part and the software-defined networking equipment, will be open sourced along with the core platform. Because if we don't have a critical mass of scenarios able to support this, then you will have a platform that possibly is not usable, or you don't have the incentive to engage. So thank you for your question. The answer is that yes, whatever scenario is end-to-end virtualized now, and I'm talking about some general purpose brute forcing, meeting the middle attack, some other aspects, some other scenarios that are already end-to-end virtualized. So practically they could be onboarded in CAIPO or in Foresight or in another platform. They don't have to be bound in Spider. They will be also open sourced.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, as you can see the questions on the screen that I should follow, even though I will pivot from them, so maybe we will get back to them. But following this discussion, what is the evolution that all of you sees in the future? So question 2 is more about how the technology has evolved over the recent years, or how actually the cyber range landscape evolved over the years. I would ask you to put it in the focus of the time frame of your own project, so not to go back too long, but during or in between when you started the project and where we are now. How did this landscape evolve? And if you could give a few insight on where do you think where we are going? And maybe for the sake of change, let's start it backwards. So, Nicholas.
Yes. Since at least the start of Foresight project, we have seen the need to support several aspects of coordination and exchange of information between cyber ranges and other training environments that are of varying capabilities. So getting to define how services at the federation level would have to be provided was something that we need to approach and overcome over those years. We surely see a need for supporting technologies that are more state of the art. I mean, in the years to come, like for example, AI and other things that, or blockchain, or other emerging technologies. But they find their way eventually into domains that need to be modeled and to be used by cyber ranges. So I think such emerging technologies will be something to be further investigated in the following years. Thank you.
Thank you. Panayotis?
Okay, so practically I would like to say that from the beginning of our project, we are just checking the competition, and we are seeing out there that there is right now booming what we say some niche cyber range, let's say, offerings. We see that there are companies, I can mention some of them if you want. I mean, I know this recorded session, that are actually trying to monetize and exploit even cyber ranges with physical presence. We have seen cyber ranges in for train management systems, for water management systems, so that practically span from creating creating physical premises and environments where they imitate the real environments, and they have the virtualized part complementing this physical presence. So practically under this perspective, seeing that right now this is an ongoing trend, I would say, this hybrid mode, the mode where you offer physical/virtual niche exercises. Under this perspective, we are enforcing that Spider might be a direct competitor to these already existing commercial offerings that right now do not have, let's say, the ability to physically imitate slices and an end-to-end, I mean bottom-up, the existence of a telco provider. So we are seeing ourselves positioned as direct competitors to these hybrid environments, and not to, traditional virtualized, end-to-end virtualized environments like Hack the Box or things like that, because we have this specificity that we cannot overcome, the specificity of the engagement of hardware. But on the other side, I think it makes ourselves and our positioning more clear to the market. Hope that this helped.
Yes, thank you. Jakub?
Yeah, I think like from point of view of Kaipo project, we actually started the development we started working with Open Nebula Cloud many years back then, and we actually used a completely different way how to describe the scenarios, because we used back then basically virtual images with no versioning and so on. So they were basically, let's say, blobs of data connected in a network. Then we evolved. We started using OpenStack, which offered us many advantages of the cloud platform, and we also switched to describing everything as a code. So basically, the training is described as a code. The underlying virtual infrastructure is described as a code. You can even create your own images, which are you can compile them because they are also described as a code. And like, I think that there are many ways how or what to do in the future. Of course, we can talk about AI for attackers, or even more automation for any tasks. But and I think I will probably repeat myself again. But like, I think the important part here is to focus more on creating this content, because we as the cyber engine, the end of the day, is just virtualizing platform, and if you don't have anything to run there, then it doesn't make sense to have it.
Absolutely. But thank you for all of you for all the answers. One of the biggest challenges that I see, and actually you're circulating around this topic without actually mentioning it, is the ease of use of a cyber range. Not necessarily as a participant, but as a content creator. So what are the biggest challenges you see there, and what would be your way forward to make content creation more easy to be done, or more flexible, or more faster to react to the growing demand of trainings and exercises and etc., or even research activities that can be done on a cyber range? How do you see this in the current form and in the future? Jakub?
I think there are actually two parts of this question. One is the technical one, and we are trying to address it by this describing things as a code and building, let's say, some libraries of Ansible roles. I mean, we can have also, I don't know, some GUI to drag and drop the stuff together and so on. But I think this is the let's say, easier part. The harder part is that we actually need to have people who are able to create the content, because, as I said, it's very multidisciplinary topic. It's like you can be good in cybersecurity, but if you don't know how to make the content engaging, then it will fail, and vice versa. So yeah.
Thank you.
I would say that following the Jakub's lines and his footsteps, I would say that indeed there are two types of problems. If I try to wrap until them and summarize them, I would address the first type as syntactic interoperability, and the other as semantic interoperability. For the syntactic type, I think it is obvious there is right now a need to put in place while we have normative models for expressing CVs, CWEs, at sticks models, attack patterns, etc. Maybe for the cyber ranges, the way the exercise is syntactically authored, I mean, if it is hardware PNF or VNF related, attached vulnerabilities, difficulty, associated techniques from the CAPEC repository, so some sort of a common meta model between cyber ages, although it could be characterized as a low-hanging fruit. On the other hand, it turns out not to be, so some effort has to be done there for the syntactic interoperability. And for the semantic part, I would say that describing and exercising and executing an exercise is completely different. So all aspects about how exercises are bound to underlying hardware, specificities of the underlying hardware, onboarded general purpose compute infrastructures, exposed interfaces from hypervisors for attestation, for all this stuff, for special type of computation. I mean, all this stuff that makes an exercise a priori not transferable from one, I would say, compute engine to another, is things that we have to be tackled. For me, both syntactic and semantic part have to be tackled if we want to address the holy grail, you know, of real interoperability between cyber ranges.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Yes, from my side, first of all, I would like to say that I agree with the views expressed by the previous two speakers. So indeed, we have this technical approach, semantic one that was mentioned. Technically speaking, there are challenges that need to be overcome, but at the end of the day, we need to be ahead of, let's say, the rate of increase of the knowledge accumulated by attackers. So at the content side, I would say that it's totally different to be able to design something that indeed is, let's say, state of the art, something that is using techniques, let's say, for a red blue team exercise, techniques that are a bit more old. This needs to be updatable, needs to bring along new techniques, and bringing those new techniques into new scenarios is something that always needs quite some thinking. So having the ability to use accumulated new knowledge and bring this into new scenario is something that definitely needs to be addressed. So that's from my side.
Thank you very much. As we are getting to the end of the time frame for the webinar, we have one final question from the audience, and maybe we have time for that. So I would ask all of you just have like a 2-sentence response to this. And the question goes as, can you evaluate the different architecture benefits, Concordia, CAIPO, exchange of scenarios and federation solutions? So Jakub and Nicholas, could you quickly reflect on this one before closing?
Yeah, sure. From CAIPO or Concordia's point of view, we have we don't have federation itself, like the cyber ranges are federated together. They are basically just using the same language, the same format. So it's just about more exchange of the content and ideas. There is no tight technical federation there. And I think it's better because it's easier to reach. The technical one takes a lot of time and effort and so on. But that's just my point of view.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Yes, I would agree with Jakub. I think that we are addressing things at a different level. From our point of view, it's just a need to specify things in an abstract way so that subsequently cyber ranges using their own technologies can make scenarios a reality. So we're actually working at different levels with CAIPO.
Okay, thank you for the answers. And then to close the panel discussion, again, just one final question and just a couple of sentence answers from all of you. What do you think, or what do you envision for the future in terms of market development? And well, how to get there might not fit in, but what are your thoughts on the future of the cyber ranges? And for the sake of change, let's start with Panayotis. I'm not sure, Panayotis, if you're talking, but you're muted.
Yes, yes. Can you please repeat?
Yes. So, well, could we have just a very short summary of your view on the future of cyber range market development in terms of market development?
Yeah. As I said previously, actually, I will stick to this answer. I am seeing as two distinct, let's say, exploitation paths for, and I think also I tend to judge the market from these two different path perspective. I'm seeing that there are going to be both a boom in the virtualized cyber ranges that are able to imitate a lot of topologies, protocols, as you saw here in the other two projects, SCADA, etc., etc. And they are going also hand in hand, in parallel, also to flourish and boom other type of cyber range division, let's say, of hybrid part, where actually the interplay with cyber physical object is going to be mandatory. As I said, from our perspective, we are clearly leaning towards the hybrid one, but that does not mean that if you ask in a personal view, that both, let's say, both types, let's say, of cyber ranges are going to actually have maybe exponential growth during the next years, and that is because the market is trying to accelerate and cover the learning gap and the competency gap from some specific niche environments. And certifications, general purpose certifications, and general purpose knowledge that right now exist in several distributors and certification, let's say, bodies is going to exist and are going to exist. But I think the need to cover this gap as fast as possible will actually cause a huge growth in both hybrid and virtualized cyber range market. Thank you.
Jakub?
Yeah, I think that in following years, we actually can see specialization of cyber ranges, because like we can see there are a lot of needs in the market. So someone needs something with hardware connected to emulate attacks on this infrastructure. The other ones will be just the virtualized, as we heard. One thing, I think there will be actually in the future, let's say, separation of cyber ranges and the scenario development. Like the idea is here that I want to provide training or exercises, so I'll get my cyber range somewhere. It can be the commercial one or open source one, and then I will just focus on creating the exercises or the training, and I will just have the cyber range as the software itself. So I think this like professionalization and specialization, because the market is kind of new, I think.
Thank you. And finally, Nicholas.
Yes, I also agree with Jakub and Panayiotis. So from my side, I would just like to highlight that indeed I foresee that we will be moving from solutions currently available to others that are more specialized, more available to a wider range of security professionals or users that are more entry level but interested to security. So just like you highlighted in the beginning of this webinar, CRs need to be made available to SMEs, organizations, member states. So I think that we will see an explosion in the use of CRs in several aspects. I think also the use of digital twins will help in many ways to broaden the use of CRs in several other aspects. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for being here and presenting everything today. And Stephanie, would you like to say a few closing remarks?
I would just like to thank all of our panelists, yourself, Sava, for being here today and giving us this really comprehensive look at cyber ranges in Europe, and the ones that have been funded through the Horizon 2020 programme. My second thank you goes to the audience, who've been super interactive with lots of questions and a few of their own comments. So thank you all for that. It's very much appreciated. And my third thank you goes, of course, to my colleague, Nicolo, who we've been on quite a journey together as well, non-technically or not very technically, on cybersecurity. So thank you, Nicolo, for helping, for all the hard work you've done in organising this webinar. We hope to be, just to say as well that this webinar is brought to you by the European Commission's Horizon Results Booster. So this is an excellent example of a group of projects jointly disseminating their results and innovation. So just in case anyone else is interested, you can log on to the Horizon Results Booster website and find out more information. Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. And,
thank you.
Everybody have a nice day.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.